In toy collecting circles, the term Holy Grail can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. For wealthy high-end collectors, it means extremely rare items, such as the infamous rocket-firing Boba Fett prototypes, or carded salesman samples of the mail-away Belloc action figure from the Kenner Indiana Jones toy line. To other collectors, it can mean less common but fairly expensive items, such as a Scareglow action figure from Masters of the Universe, or the Flag aircraft carrier from the G.I. Joe line. In my experience, as someone who's collected vintage toys for 30 years, it's nothing to do with rarity or price. It simply comes down to how long I've been searching for an item and how desperately I've wanted it. So while many vintage Action Man enthusiasts will claim that the Electronic Command Center from 1980 is not all that rare, it is a toy that has eluded me on my collecting journey for the last 40 years. I have pined after this playset ever since I saw it in an Action Man equipment manual when I was around 5 years old. In fact, I wanted this thing so much in my youth that my talented granddad copied the image in the manual and created a replica using plywood and nails, and that thing was awesome. Although this toy was manufactured in decent quantities, it is still challenging to find one in mint unbroken condition and with working electronics. And even though I've been collecting vintage Action Man since 1993, a complete example in the type of condition I was looking for just never came across my path until very recently. But now that I've secured one of my Grail pieces and it's here in the studio, you can bet your ass I'm going to make a video about it. Stay tuned.
Come with me, toy fans.
Hello Action Man fans, my name is Tony and welcome back to the Analog Toys YouTube channel, where we're obsessed with bringing you the true history of vintage toys and action figures. Over his 18-year career as Britain's leading toy brand, Action Man was provided with numerous vehicles and almost countless uniform and equipment sets. Yet from his introduction into the British toy market in 1966 to his retirement in 1984, Action Man was only ever afforded 2 playsets. The first of which was the Action Man training tower that's pictured here. And this toy was originally designed by Hasbro for the G.I. Joe Adventure Team line, and the tooling was borrowed by Palitoy to bring this item into the Action Man range in 1976. Then in 1980 the Palitoy company introduced the Action Man Electronic Command Center, and this toy was designed in-house at the Palitoy headquarters in Colville, Leicestershire, England. The Electronic Command Center resembles a World War II pillbox emplacement, and this was a terrific idea for an Action Man accessory. The box art advertised this toy as the nerve center for all Action Man operations, and your Action Man troops can use the command center to repel an enemy attack by employing the realistic electronic firing sounds. The Action Man Electronic Command Center is a very large and extremely impressive toy, yet its development is far more interesting. Once again, I defer to the expertise of Palitoy Action Man's chief designer, Mr. Bob Breakin, who states that the idea for the command center came to Palitoy from their advertising agency as a crude model. The design department then had to redesign it so that it was a production viability, and cost was a big factor. The pillbox had to fit at least 1 Action Man inside, but ideally 2 comfortably. To design the toy as an injection moulding would have incurred very high tooling costs, so the team decided it should be a very large blow moulding in high density polyethylene. The design department had experience with these type of mouldings from when they had previously designed toys such as the Action Man Scorpion tank. Palitoy had been producing blow moulded dolls for many years, well before the acquisition of the Palitoy brand from Castleloyd by General Mills in 1968, and choosing to manufacture the command center as a blow moulding would also provide work for the Blowmatic department at the Colville factory. The main problem with choosing to use this manufacturing technique was the stability of the moulding, yet to understand this one must first understand the blow moulding process. But first, a bit of history. Back in 1925, Castleloyd, the company founded by Alfred Pallet in 1919, produced its first doll called Diddums. This doll was based on drawings of quirky characters by Mabel Lucy Atwell, and this is an early example of character merchandising. The doll was produced in celluloid by a very crude blow moulding process, where 2 sheets of celluloid were forced into a mould by very hot air, with the hot air sifting the celluloid to form the shape of the mould. Many other character dolls were made by this method in the years after. However, celluloid is highly flammable, so the company introduced new non-flammable materials, such as Bexoid and Plastex. These materials were hard plastic and processed differently than blow moulding, where liquid plastic was laid up in moulds by hand and hardened. It wasn't until the 1950s when Castleloyd started making dolls in softer PVC, and pioneered the process of stitching in nylon filaments into the heads as hair, introducing the doll of the century in Yvonne. The 3 times award-winning famous doll first produced by Palitoy in 1965 was Tiny Tears, which was also made in PVC. After the Second World War, Castleloyd would pioneer the modern process of blow moulding in the UK, when it imported only the second machine in the world from America. Members of the Castleloyd staff, including Palitoy's Director of Design Research and Development, Bill Pugh, accompanied one of the first delegations of British business people to visit the USA to discover new techniques that had been developed there during the war years. What they found was a machine that had a much more advanced method of blow moulding than the one used by Alfred Pallet in 1925. Blow moulding then became a big feature of Castleloyd's business, as bigger and better machines were designed and constructed by its engineers. The first Jif Lemon was produced by Castleloyd by blow moulding, as were many styles of washing up liquid containers. The Castleloyd company had opened a new factory in Colville sometime around 1937 or 1938, initially to make soft-bodied dolls that had plush fabric bodies and hard plastic heads. Then in the early 1960s, the toy brand at Colville was separated from Castleloyd, which was based in Leicester. Rotational moulding and blow moulding machines were installed at the Colville factory to produce the many styles and sizes of dolls required for retail. And this was just prior to the sale of the Palitoy brand and the Colville factory to General Mills in 1968. So how did the blow moulding process work? When a product such as a watering can is blow moulded, stresses are built up in the plastic, so when the filling hole in the watering can is cut out using a process known as trepanning, the stresses are released, which may cause a certain amount of distortion of the plastic product. When Palitoy were designing the Action Man Command Centre, they needed to trepan a large rectangular hole in the back of the moulding and a smaller slit in the front for the cannons to point out, and both of these operations would release stresses and cause some distortion. Obviously the larger hole in the back was the bigger problem, so they developed an injection moulding tool to produce a high impact polystyrene frame to be fitted to this hole to take up that distortion. This also tidied up the rough trepanning of the hole at the same time. The sound unit was fitted inside the blow moulding, which was then housed inside an injection moulded console that was needed to hold all of the necessary electronic components.
I can remember the pillbox.
The pillbox, electronic pillbox, yeah.
We had trouble with it. I can remember from the
When you cut the hole in the back, it's so shut.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
It was blow moulded in one big piece, but you had to cut a big square hole in the back.
And it sort of went then.
And of course, it would.
Yeah, I mean, all the corners had to be rounded for the process of blow moulding, which was not probably in fully as a pillbox, was it?
No.
You know, as it got very thin on the corners.
But we designed a sort of injection moulded sort of frame that went round inside.
We did, that's right.
Held
Yeah,
it together.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, that was one of the ones I can.
And there was all the electronics inside, wasn't there?
It was, yeah. They was all sort of injection moulded bits, weren't they?
It's interesting to note that all the Palitoy employees that I've discussed this toy with all refer to it as the pillbox, which leads me to believe that that was its working title before the marketing department got involved. The concept of a pillbox for Action Man was a genius idea, as thousands of these structures were built all over Britain to defend the Isles against a possible Nazi invasion during World War II, and many of these concrete emplacements still litter the English countryside today. Alongside toy designer Bob Breakin, many other Palitoy employees were involved in the development of this toy, including process manager Alec Langton. David Eames worked with an electronic sound company to develop the hardware required to produce the realistic firing sounds, while Ivor Edmonds completed much of the design drawing work for the injection moulded parts. Process engineer Ken Woolhouse then checked all of these drawings before passing them on to tooling manager Roger Morrison to get the tooling made. Then the legendary Action Man packaging illustrator Dave Barnacle created the art for the box, while Greg Hughes, who had previously designed many of the Space Ranger concepts, drew the instruction leaflet for the command centre that featured a comic strip on the reverse side. In one of the comic panels, Greg actually drew the enemy troops getting visibly shot up, and he says, and I quote, "This was the only time I did this. Oops." Given the extensive development and the high tooling costs, the Palitoy design team viewed this product as a premium item, and the marketing department agreed. As such, it deservedly commanded a double-page spread in the Palitoy trade catalogue, yet the Command Centre was not the only Action Man electronic product being marketed that year. 1980 would also see the introduction of Rom the Space Knight and the Solar Hurricane vehicle, and these three prestige Action Man items were brought together for the filming of a classic television advertisement.
The Action Man Electronic Command Center. Who knows its secret location? Why are its guns firing? Who is the talking commander calling?
Send out the patrol.
Did the Space Ranger and the Solar Hurricane pick up any signal? Where is the Space Knight Rom? The Command Center. Talking commander. Solar Hurricane. Rom. What strange force will bring them together? Only you know the answer. You and Action Man. From Palitoy.
As you can see from the price sticker here, This toy retailed for over £33 in 1980, and that's not cheap, even by today's standards. At that time, I think my dad only earned about 80 quid a week, and with another brother and sister in the house and this toy costing almost half a week's wages, I'm no longer surprised I didn't get it for Christmas. The Action Man Electronic Command Centre is just over 18 inches wide, approximately 11 inches deep, and around 15 inches tall to the top of the radar dish, and it easily accommodates 2 Action Man figures. A colourful cardboard insert stretches across the internal walls and features illustrations of ammunition shells alongside fire extinguishers and the like. On one wall is a vacuum form panel representing the communications console where the provided headset can be plugged in, and on the opposite wall is a radar monitoring station, and the radar dish on the roof of the command centre rotates, with this effect being achieved via a turntable and handle situated on the inside. Action Man's heavily fortified stronghold can also repel an enemy attack with the use of the command centre's 2 main armaments. The first of which is a Vickers machine gun, and the second is a large injection moulded cannon that is unique to this Action Man set. This cannon has been produced in a metallic looking bluish grey colour, and this type of plastic is very brittle, making this the most easily broken part of the entire toy. The barrels of both of these weapons protrude through the forward facing firing slit, and Action Man can either fire these weapons from the kneeling position, or by standing and lining up his targets through one of the 2 opening observation hatches. In order to utilise the realistic firing sounds, you need to plug in a 9-volt battery, which can be stored behind a panel labelled the laser range detector, and next to that is the on-off switch. Turn the unit on, and then by using the 2 buttons located on the centre console, you can either fire the cannon or the machine gun. Oddly, the cannon makes a whistling sound of the shell being fired, and it tapers off without an explosion sound at the end, but when I was 5 years old, I would have simply added the explosion sound effects myself. By today's standards, these electronic sound effects are very basic, but back in 1980 this was an amazing play feature. The Electronic Command Centre also came packed in with a wealth of accessories, many of which were commonly available in other Action Man sets, and included 2 sandbags, an SLR rifle and a Sterling submachine gun, 3 hand grenades, a pair of binoculars, an all-disc signal lamp, 3 sticks of dynamite with a detonator, the aforementioned headset, a fire extinguisher, a 2-piece entrenching tool, a camp stove and a mess kit. For those of you who've never played with or handled an Action Man mess kit, I'd like to take a brief moment to highlight its amazingly intricate detail. On the surface this looks like a simple injection moulded accessory, but it's actually made up of 6 separate pieces. First off, you unclip and fold out the handle, and then remove the lid, and inside you'll find a miniature knife, fork and spoon. This level of detail still blows my mind 40 years after I first played with one, and it's a prime example of the old saying, they just don't make them like they used to. Although the command centre only comes with 1 rifle, there are 2 rifle racks located on the inside, both of which hold 3 rifles, and you can fill these with additional SLRs or an assortment of other small arms available from the Action Man armoury. The final accessory included in this set is a simple piece of cardboard, and while I'm not usually a fan of cardboard accessories, in this case it's the item that turns this pillbox into a gorgeous display centrepiece. With an illustration depicting scrub, grass and barbed wire, when you place this card cover in front of the Electronic Command Centre, it immediately creates the illusion that this fortified position is the central frontline location of Action Man's battle. Palitoy's Action Man toy line was massively popular in Britain, and despite the overwhelming volume of different products offered over his 18 years on toy store shelves, the Electronic Command Centre remains one of the most unique items ever created for the line, and while age has long extinguished my desire to play with Action Man, after waiting 4 decades, I'm certainly not going to pass up the opportunity to set up some epic scenes. Firstly, I've got a couple of Action Men watching the perimeter while the Royal Engineer sweeps for mines, and then an Action Man soldier is making a brew at the rear, while the Royal Marine Commando and the British Infantry head out on a clearance patrol.
Give me some cover.
Action Man has spotted the German army approaching, so he mans the guns, checks his weapon, and waits for the battle to erupt. And it's this shot right here that I've waited 40 years to see. I've always wanted to know what advancing troops would look like from the perspective of the Action Man Command Centre's firing slot. And now I can die a happy man. Although my journey to secure this grail for my Action Man collection has lasted most of my adult life, it was truly worth the wait, as the epic, prestigious nature of this toy did not disappoint. And on behalf of a grateful generation of British children, I'd like to sincerely thank every employee of the Palitoy company that had a hand in its design or manufacture. You made our childhood dreams become a reality through the medium of toys, and we are forever in your debt. So thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, you can click the links up here to check out some of our other vintage Action Man content, or subscribe to the channel by clicking here, or consider supporting us on Patreon, where you'll get access to hours of exclusive content. I'm Tony from Analog Toys, and I'll see you in the next video.